music for animation, I found an old rescored short film and I'm gonna play it for you and I'm gonna rate my own music and we're gonna talk a little bit about music for animation. So let's go! Hello, my name is Adam Hesselbom. I am a composer and a musician. I'm based in Malmö, Sweden. And on this channel I talk about my life in music and film and how I make music. And today I'm gonna rate an old score. You see, I found an old short film that I rescored. And what does that mean? That means that I didn't write the original music for this film, but someone else did. But it is available on the QTube, where you can find unscored films to practice your scoring. So I think this film is about 5 years ago, I rescored this. And it was actually in my portfolio when I applied for my master's program. So hopefully it will stand the test of time. And I actually have a PDF score as well that we can talk a little bit about. But as usual, when I rate music, I like to divide it into the musical ID. And today, since we have moving picture, I'm also going to talk about how the music correlates to the story. Number 2, the arrangement and orchestration. And number 3, production mixing. So let's dive into it. I'm going to play you a little bit of the film and then we're going to talk. So this is a little animated short film. It's only 3 minutes, less than 3 minutes. And it's about a llama who wants to eat some berries. But the berries get stolen by penguins, and especially this little one penguin. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of the score. And this printed score was actually made after I composed the music, which is like the standard for any musical score to a moving picture. You make the music first and then you make a readable score out of it. So I would just tell you a little bit about the instrumentation here. So it's an orchestral score, and the orchestra is fairly standard. Consists of double woodwinds, 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets and 2 bassoons, but they're also piccolo. And usually the piccolo is held by the second flautist. So this score calls actually for 3 flute players at the same time. Then we have a brass section, 6 horns, 2 trumpets, 2 trombones, and tuba. There are 2 things that are, standing out here. Fairly large horn section, maybe a bit too large for this woodwind section, maybe. 4 horns maybe would be more, proportional to the number of woodwind players. There's also actually missing, because an orchestra of this setting usually has a bass trombone also. So bass trombone is actually missing. Then we have some percussion, timpani, triangle bass drum, suspended cymbal, snare drum, tambourine, wood blocks, and xylophone. Since this is a score with samples, there's no live orchestra playing here. It doesn't really matter how you go about doing the percussion. In a live setting, of course, you have to have in mind like how many percussion players and the distance between the instruments when they are changing and stuff like that. We have a harp. Then there are charango, which the score state is sampled. And if you are using the Spitfire Labs, then you know that the charango is an instrument in the Spitfire Labs. Free sampled instruments. A male choir, also sampled, and a string section. So fairly traditional orchestral lineup. So what have we got here in the beginning? Well, we have the main idea here is that since this is South America, I went for this, folk rhythm. It's fairly common in folk music from Spain and South America, in which you mix 6, 8, and 3, 4. So la da 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 bam bam ja da 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 dum dum. And it has a certain swing to it, I think. I think it's a nice rhythm. That is the main idea of this opening statement. And then as soon as we see a little hint of conflict, I move into, a whole tune scale. So, and that is a scale without any like tonal anchor. There's no like tonal center because you have only whole tune steps. A little bit. There's a little bit of chaos to it because since there is no tonal center, you feel a bit adrift when you use whole tone scale. So I think that is a good choice. I think this rhythm is a good choice. But there is one thing that is clearly missing, and that is a strong melody. So instead of going for a strong melody, I focused all my energy into crafting this rhythm. And yeah, you could argue that this is the melody. But it's barely a melody, if I'm being honest. It's barely a melody. It's mainly just chords, And, it's the tonic, the 1, and the minor 4. And of course, you don't need to have a melody. There are so many film scores that don't have melodies. You don't need melodies. I think in this score, I made a disservice to myself by not having a clear melody. You will hear eventually that I will try to mimic this chord, but it's so generic, so you don't recognize it as like a main theme. So musical idea for this first part, the rhythm, good, whole tone, good choice. Would have been better if I had a clear melody. Okay, let's continue. I think it's kind of funny that he saved the berry and not the penguin. You could see here I move everything, one step up to increase the stakes a little bit. Also, pretty good choice. And here is the only appearance of the male choir, which also I think is, it's a bit of a cliche. And I think that's the deal with scoring animation, because you kind of have to use the cliches, but still be a little bit original. I think there actually was, back in the heydays, 30s, 40s, scoring studios had like these manuals with different, cliches. For example, xylophone, eyebrows, a whole book of them. And you could just pick. And I think you kind of need to have this, you can't avoid them completely. I mean, instead use them and use them to their advantage. You can see here when the action is going downwards, they fall down. I mean, the music falls down. I think I've used cliches pretty good here. Yeah, and that sequence, maybe this is not the musical ID department, but the sound effects are so loud, so I mean, the music is kind of lost. When they are flying through the air and the llama realizes that he needs to save the penguin, you can hear this little, I think it's like cello and horn. And this is one of the places where a thematic, the lack of thematic material is a little bit too clear, because it could have been more effective if it was, if it was referring to the main melody or something. And here you can hear that I tried to mimic the opening theme, those chords. I'm trying to mimic it. I don't know if it's as effective as it could have been. We went from, no conflict to conflict, and then all of these obstacles and the dangers, and now they have landed. And yeah, the llama's mission have failed because he has no berries, and the penguin found the other penguins. So at the very end, the penguin comes around and he's thankful to the llama for saving him, and he gets treated to their little berry fest. And at the end, the charango finally comes in. And I think maybe this should have been the theme from the opening, So if I were to do this again, I would introduce a more clear theme. I could have used a better theme could have been used also in the whole tone department, because you would recognize the theme as it morphs into the different variations of the mode. So orchestration, I think I'm quite happy with the orchestration on this piece of music. I think I like the idea that apparently I was kind of sparse. I mean, you could score animation and just have everything at once, whole orchestra playing basically all the time. You could still make that work. I have left a lot of room in here. You can see like a page like this one, only a couple of gestures. And I think it works well for what it is. I think the only thing I have, that's a red flag orchestration-wise is actually this. The constant DVC, which when you play with samples, it's not an issue, because if you press 2 notes at the same time, you will trigger 2 samples. So it's like having 2 violin 1 sections. But it's if you were to record this, then the string section would sound like at half its amplitude if you DVC it. So I would advise against using this much DVC. It looks a bit amateur to have this much DVC. I don't think you need this much DVC. Take this one, for example. It's only two different notes, E and A sharp, all the way through, and it's voiced like this. I don't think it needs it. Otherwise, I think I've used the orchestral powers pretty well. Mixing and production-wise, If you saw my last video, which had a much older piece of mine, you can see that I have learned a lot. So I programmed the MIDI much better. And this is the BBC Symphony Orchestra by Spitfire, that plugin. And I think the workflow of that suits me better, and the way it's visually presented, and the way you choose articulations, and the way you trigger the samples, it suits me better because it feels more musical. So MIDI programming is much better in this one. And I couldn't hear anything like being really off or, sticking out a lot or something like that. I think I have not touched a lot of, EQ controls for this because I think BBC sounds very good out of the box. And if you arrange it well enough, there's very little like EQing to be done, I think. Don't solve anything in mixing that you could avoid in the arrangement. It's kind of dry. These kind of applications, I mean, they swallow way more reverb than you might think. So nowadays, I usually go for a little wetter than I want to. The moving picture just eats up the reverb, and the sound effects eat reverb for some reason. So I think it's maybe a little bit dry. It has that almost like studio feel. But if I wanted to go for that sound, I think I should have treated it a bit differently. To have it sound more maybe retro scoring stage on the drier side. And I also think I could have added a little bit of compression to just even out the levels a little bit. Not much, but just a little bit, because there are some sounds like sticking out a little bit. So what did you think? How did I do with this? Was I fair to myself? Comment below. And what should I rate next? Maybe I should rate one of your scores. I will put a link in the description, and you can send me something that I could rate on the channel. It would be fun, I think. If you thought this was interesting, then give me a like and subscribe to the channel, because I post every week. And I will see you on the next one. Cheers. Whole tone, good choice.